your family's diagnosis doesn't have to also be your diagnosis, and that you can still have a life, grow your family, have a career in the process of also stepping in and navigating a caregiving journey with your parents or whomever you're caring for.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's been through and still going through the trenches of motherhood myself, I get it. Life gets busy and sometimes your relationship takes a back seat. But guess what? You can feel like a couple while raising kids, and I'm here to help. Join me each week here as we dive into the messy but fulfilling world of marriage and motherhood. From navigating conflict to reigniting that spark, we're going to chat about it all. So, if you're juggling mom life with wife life, this podcast is for you. And hey, if you love what you hear, I'd be so grateful if you could rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Here's this week's episode. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. This week, we're going to be tackling something that you might not be thinking of. I know I don't think of it, although in the back of our heads, I'm sure you can admit that this is something maybe you might worry about. And that's being a caregiver, right? Not to our kids, but maybe for our parents or someone else that you're close to that is aging. And so I have here Erin Antroinen. She is the passionate owner and CEO of NextGen Caregivers, whose journey into caregiving was sparked when she simultaneously cared for her father battling cancer and her mother facing dementia and Parkinson's. Erin is your guide to a personalized caregiving approach, recognizing that each caregiver's story is unique. She's here to support caregivers at every stage, from newbies seeking logistics and stress management tips to seasoned caregivers looking for somatic awareness and emotional support, and those wanting to thrive on their caregiving journey. Erin believes that caregiving, though demanding, offers incredible opportunities for personal growth and fulfillment. Wow, that is a lot. Thank you so much for being here, Erin. I cannot wait to dig in more into your story and also how you help people. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michelle. This is awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. This is definitely a topic that it's kind of like how to prepare for a funeral. No one wants to talk about that, but it's like a part of life, and you don't want to get caught not knowing what to do in the stress and the trauma of it all. And so when I found out what you did, I was like, I absolutely need you on the show, selfishly, but also I'm sure there's listeners out there who could use what you do and help them along the way. So I'm so glad that we met and that you're here.
Thank you. I'm so passionate about what I'm doing.
So before we get into it, can you share with us where you live and briefly what you do?
Yeah, so I'm in Maryland, so I'm about 20 miles outside of Washington, D.C., just Southern Maryland. And I love helping caregivers to navigate their caregiving journey and finding joy and reclaiming their lives. Your family's diagnosis doesn't have to also be your diagnosis, and that you can still have a life, grow your family, have a career in the process of also stepping in and navigating a caregiving journey with your parents or whomever you're caring for.
Wow, that's huge. I mean, even those who may not be at that stage yet, I think that this is such a important conversation to have because as a mom, it's easy to forget yourself, right? You get really laser focused on the task at hand, which I'm sure is similar when you become a caregiver. Maybe even more difficult actually because kids age up and they get easier.
Yeah.
And with caregiving, especially if you're caregiving people older, it's actually the opposite. And they're more stubborn and bigger. So I can only imagine how challenging that can be, especially I've only been able to witness my stepdad care for my grandma and just the stories he shared. And at one point, my mom was being a caregiver for her dad before he passed and just listening to the stories. And I'm like, whoa, that's a lot. It's heavy. It's a lot. Emotionally, I'm sure a lot comes up. But before we get into that, we can go in so many different directions.
Right.
What led you to become a caregiving coach? I know you personally experienced this, but not everyone turns what they experience into their profession. So what led you to do that?
That's a really good question, Michelle, because I've been thinking a lot on this over the last couple weeks. So my mom just actually passed in March of 2023. And so my parents, they both were sober and were in the program called Alcoholics Anonymous, which I'm sure most people are familiar with. And they dedicated their entire life to helping people to get and stay sober. And it just feels so appropriate to carry on their legacy and to be able to get through something and then to turn around and to bring people back up with me. It's that whole like we only have to be a couple steps ahead premise with the people, and to be able to turn around and say, this is like, had I known this, I wouldn't have hit this wall. I wouldn't have had this traumatic thing happen. Because the thing is, caregiving, it's emotionally hard, it's challenging in so many different facets. And also there's this beautiful component to it that if we can get on solid ground and we can have those logistics in place and we can do those things, it actually gives us this beautiful opportunity to learn all of the things. I was talking with one of my friends who's a caregiver. Her mom has also passed away and she's now trying to find jobs. And some of the people that are interviewing her for jobs are like, well, you've been a caregiver. And so don't you think that all of your expertise and all of your skills have diminished because you haven't been in the working field? And she was like, absolutely not. These are now the skills that I have as a result of caregiving, just like being a mom and raising your children and being home with them. That actually grows your skills, I think, sometimes even more than being in the workforce, because it's real life application to be able to apply them in what you're doing.
That's such a narrow-minded perspective too.
Totally. We don't have time for that here in 2020. Me too. I was like, I'm mad for you.
Like, can you just let me know what training I need to like catch up with what I know might be outdated? But like, let's not downplay the amount of critical thinking, how quick I am on my feet to diffuse situations. Like, come on, please.
1,000%.
Anyway,
1,000%.
Yeah. Been a little spicy today.
We digress.
Okay, so how did you navigate self-care while being a caregiver? So I've been on like this self-care kick with the podcast, and so it's only fitting for me to bring this in because like becoming a mom, becoming a parent, caregiving involves a lot of giving, right? A lot of us, all of us, emotionally, physically, energetically, and mentally, just everything.
Yeah.
And if we don't care for ourselves, we are setting ourselves up for failure. So how did you navigate that? Because not only were you doing that for one parent, but then you had another parent.
Yeah. Well, and let me back up a little bit, Michelle. So my dad was diagnosed with cancer in 2012. And so my mom was pretty still cognizant. So I was kind of like a supportive piece to her. So whenever he was in the hospital, just helping to manage things back and forth, all of that sort of stuff. She was doing the bulk of the caring. I was more of a supportive piece with her. It wasn't until the pandemic where my dad got really sick and came home on hospice. And it was my mom for a couple of years had started showing some signs, and me and my sister were stepping in to do things and trying to figure things out. So the same week that he came home on hospice was actually the same week that we got my mom's diagnosis of frontal temporal lobe dementia as well as Parkinson's. And not only did we really have like a death sentence for my dad, but we also really got the same news for my mom, even though we knew that my dad's path through his end of life journey was going to be shorter than my mom's. We didn't know what hers was going to look like, but what we did know is that she was going to need immediate care. And so at that point, after we had 3 weeks at home with my dad, and it was so beautiful. It was hard. It was challenging. Like there was a lot of hard. There was a lot of, I don't want to do this. And why do I have to do this? And, we think that I had the impression that hospice was this like organization that comes in and takes care of everything at end of life. And yes, there's some great positives to hospice. They do have some great support systems, but like the day to day, minute to minute, hour to hour is you as the family taking care of your loved one. And that was not something that I was prepared for when we were calling hospice in. And so through that journey of like stepping in, like losing my dad and then immediately stepping in to be my mom's primary caretaker was a shock to the system, because not only am I grieving the loss of my father, but then also grieving anticipatorily the loss of my mom. I don't even know if I said that right, but we'll say it's the right
We
word,
get
right?
it.
So, and so because like every day was like another facet of her gone, and then she would have a good day, and it was this like up and down and up and down, and for probably the first 6 months we had a little bit of help, but not much. I was really there primarily nights. And I remember I didn't do a good job of taking care of myself. I was all over the place. I was, just had that S on my chest, right? I got this, I can handle
Mm-hmm.
this. Like I'm a boss bee in every other area of my life and I can handle this ish. Like, and I thought that I was doing a good job until one day I got rushed to the hospital because I was told that I was having signs of having a heart attack. And my doctor called ahead and I had to go. And it was just a panic attack. Long story short, like I'll spare you all the gory and tragic things because it was in the middle of the pandemic and it was a very scary time to be at the hospital by myself. While I had to leave my mom, it was like leaving my child. But it was that moment that I realized that like something had to change. And so I started really learning about the body and about somatic care because the thing in the world, and I don't know if you can resonate with this, Michelle, but like we talk about self-care so like esoterically, like go for a long walk, take
Yep.
a hot bath, like go and get your nails done and get a massage. And like all of that shit is nice. However, if we can't even leave because we don't have anybody to be at home with our kids or with our person that we're caring for, those things are not available to us, or if your budget's tight or whatever the case is. And so I had to find ways, like, what does self-care actually mean? And what I uncovered was self-care was actually taking care of me. It is eating food that actually fuels my body. It's not eating the crap that I'm drawn to because I'm stressed out and I want to eat the candy M&Ms and I want to eat the bag of chips and the crab dip and all of that stuff, the comfort food, right? It's getting outside in sunlight. It's tapping into my breath and being able to breathe. It's spending time in prayer and meditation. And these are things that one, I didn't want to do. Like, I'm just going to be super frank, did not want to do. I fought it with every fiber of my being. But when your body is so freaking aware of what's going on, it makes you sit up and listen. Like literally, it would force me out of bed because I was having heart palpitations in the middle of my sleep. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. I need to give you some love. And so it was really, those were the basic building blocks. And then growing from there into like deeper work, like breath work and somatic work with an actual somatic coach. And because it's those things I think that were super pivotal in supporting my nervous system. Because when you're going through trauma is just what our body labels it as that. It's not even that, like, it's just a thing that happens that results in a feeling, and our nervous system goes, oh, that feels like trauma. So we're going to label this thing that happened as trauma. And so, it's figuring out what our body is doing and how it's labeling things, and then being able to give myself permission to take care of me in the middle of what I'm going through.
I actually work with my clients with somatic work, trauma-informed breath work. I also do tapping with clients, when
Yep.
it comes up. So I know personally and through my clients how impactful somatic work can be because we are so much in our minds. We are not taught how to honor the body, and we experience the world 95%. Like, it's our body.
Yeah.
5% is our minds. And so I don't know why the emphasis on how we think and thinking our way through things. It's like,
Right.
if your body is uncomfortable, it is trying to communicate with you. That is how it
Yep.
communicates with you. So I love that you're bringing this to light because I want more people to know about it and to stop like, oh, what medicine can I take to like
That.
mute my body? Like, no, it's
Yeah.
actually telling you that it needs love, it needs help, it needs attention. Something
Yep.
about how you're living needs to change.
Yep.
And if you're dropping into this episode and you're new to this show, check out episode 76 because I talk about what real self-care is because I am totally in alignment with you, Erin. I don't believe that sustainable self-care is like the luxurious things, right? Like
Yeah.
real self-care is taking a proactive stance to
Yeah.
protect your well-being, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I am burned out. Let me go get a massage. Like, awesome.
Mhm.
Love
Right.
massages. And the second you get back to being a caregiver, whether it's to your kid or to your parent, it's like vanished.
Right. Everything locks back up. You're like, what
Yeah,
just happened?
exactly. So in that hour, hour and a half,
Yeah.
you're good, but it doesn't really last. So you want to be able to take care of yourself in a way that builds on each other.
When you depend on things like massages or acupuncture and all of that stuff are great modalities, but you're depending upon somebody else's ability
Yes.
when really our body is smart. Our body knows exactly what it is that we need, but we're so busy being unconscious and walking around like just stressed out and just living reactive to what it is that we're going through rather than taking a moment and just tapping in. Like for the first time, I just started working with this one-on-one client the other day, and we celebrated so hard because after 1 week, she literally took what we did together and was able to move from like this place of feeling guilty and shameful for taking small, even just 5 to 10 minutes. Like she was like shoulding herself, like I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And I shouldn't be taking time for myself. And instead, she took a moment for herself and she danced. And like what she didn't realize was that when she was dancing, she was moving all of that stuck energy. She still had the thoughts of like, I shouldn't be doing this. And like, why am I doing this? And shaming herself. But she just like let them go by like clouds going by in the sky. And eventually she got to joy and she got to like fulfillment. And it was for 10 or 15 minutes. And it changed the trajectory of her entire day as a caregiver because she allowed herself to have that 5 to 10 minutes. I think that along with taking care, what happens is we put ourselves in expectation jail, like what we think that we should be doing as a caregiver and what that looks like. Well, I should be doing this, so I can't be doing this. And we label all of these things that aren't even true. And nobody even told us that this is what is expected of us. We just make it up and make it true. And therefore, everything else falls in line. And so does our ability to take care of ourselves, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really helps us experience the caregiving with greater capacity, right? And I'm sure it's a better experience for the person you're caring for as well. So, like, if you have so much on your plate and you're not filling your bucket up, filling your cup, whatever container you want to label it,
Right.
you're gonna burn out. You're gonna have physical symptoms that show up, just like Erin had with her experience. Like, your body has limits. And if you're not honoring that, it's gonna slap you across the face until you listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want you to
Absolutely.
get to that point, right? Like, let's not do that to ourselves because that's really scary. Like, with my stepdad, it took him getting a stroke
Yeah.
for him to realize, oh, I can't do this anymore. Hey, siblings, I need you
Yeah.
guys to rally around me and like figure this out with me because this is not sustainable anymore.
When I think it's so great that you're teaching these modalities because if you're not in a caregiving season yet, these are things that you can learn and start implementing into your day-to-day life. Because even if you're not necessarily caring for an aging parent yet, it's just a matter of time,
Yeah.
right? And we don't ever know. Like I didn't think that my parents would be gone by the time I was 38. I did not think that that would happen. I didn't think that, I would have spent my entire 30s caring for my aging parents. That was not on my life plan. Like I really wanted to get married and have children before this happened. And so, being ahead of the curve and like understanding these things, it helps us to navigate not only caregiving stress, but just stress in general to be able to navigate these seasons really well.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. So let's actually go off of that. What do you
mhm,
wish you knew that you want everyone listening to know about caregiving?
so many things. um, so I'll start kind of in the esoteric, just the like dreaming world of caregiving, that there is something so beautiful, the exchange that happens when you have the opportunity to care for somebody at that level. When you can stop focusing on what's coming, when are they going to die, how long is this going to last, and you can just get into the present moment with them. That's making me emotional. It's so beautiful and it's so real, and it's just so honoring, to be able to be there. I don't know what your experience is with your parents, like I had some great, I had some not so great years with my parents. I think we all have. And it's that role reversal, right? Of you become the parent to your parent. And if we can let go of the expectation that they are our parent and all that comes with that, like they're supposed to be the ones where you feel safe. And this is why nervous system work is so important when you're caring for them, because it's totally opposite from every level of safety that you feel in your body. And all of a sudden your body's going like, wow, I don't know how to handle this. This alignment that I have felt since in my mother's womb is now all of a sudden different. And so you have to really just getting into the place where you let go of the expectations and you just love them. Just love them in the moment of where they're at in their life. And it will bring so much more joy to the caregiving rather than wishing they were who they used to be or afraid of where they're going to be. Just be in the moment with them. Step into their world, whatever that is, because that's what really matters in the moment. And that took me a while to figure out. And I think the second thing is really making sure that you have everything in place. So like logistically getting your power of attorneys in place. It's never too early to do some of these things. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a accountant. So please talk to somebody that is a professional in these areas, but get an elder lawyer so that way you can get all of these things in place. Get your power of attorney in place, get your health power of attorney, your financial power of attorney. This was something that I was so glad that right before the pandemic, I had this like inclination, gut, Holy Spirit, whatever word that you use. It was just this like, get your power of attorneys, get all these things. And we got everything in place right before the pandemic hit. So that way we had everything that we needed, but it's just never too soon to get those documents in place. So that way, if something happens, you're prepared. Most people are glad that they have it once they have it, but they don't realize they need it until something happens.
Yeah, no, definitely. My husband and I have been talking about forever about like creating a trust and all of that and like just life. And so this is just a really good reminder for me to be like, hey,
Yeah,
let's get the ball
let's do
moving.
this.
Because I don't want my kids screwed out of what they should get and who they should go to because it wasn't official, and then leave it up to the government to decide what happens with them. Like that would just break my heart.
Because they will take their part, and that will be most of it.
Yeah, right. But thankfully, my parents are actually super on top of that. Like they have their power of attorney, they've got their trust, whatever, all the things, and they've been telling me for years, like, do this, and I'm like, I feel young. But yeah, you never know what can happen. Like I've heard of people, like people my age now. Like I'm in my late 30s, right? It's like they're losing their spouses, they're losing their kids, or whatever, and it's just like, what is happening? Like that's not supposed to happen in that order or at that time. And it's scary.
Yeah. When even as prepared as you might feel, there's still, it's just always a lot. Like you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with all of these things. And I will tell you that like me and my sister didn't argue about one thing, from the assets down to the funeral, down to, because when we sat down in January 2020, like we went through everything. We went through, how do you want to live? How do you want to die? What do you want at your funeral? Like, what do you want that to look like? Like, do you want it to be a party? Do you want this like 4-day event? Like, how do you want us to celebrate? And I know that you might be listening going like, okay, I cannot have this conversation with my parents. Like, I'm not even going to sit here. I'm making it sound very easy in this, like how I'm explaining this, but it's not. Like, you're literally talking to someone about their mortality, and it's hard, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and it's so much better to have these conversations before you need to have them right?
Yeah.
Because, or
Mm-hmm.
not even need to, because you need to have them now, but like before you have to have these conversations, because
Yeah.
I love that you said you and your sister didn't fight. And the reason you didn't fight is because it was all sorted out. There was nothing
Yeah.
for debate. It was just like, this is what it is. This is their wishes. It was documented. Whereas I'm sure lots of families out there, I can think of
Mm-hmm.
a few where they have lost their connection to each other because they fought over something that they thought was best for what happened because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't explicitly outlined. Like, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And how awful is that, right? Like, I feel like, so I recently, like, my grandpa passed away recently. And I just thought it was so amazing that death can bring people together over something sad,
Mm-hmm.
but it's bringing people together. And so if we want that to happen, we have to have the necessary conversations so that we don't potentially come apart.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's necessary. And it starts way back in caregiving. This is something that I work with my clients on how to like establish co-caregiving
Mm,
plans with their families, because sometimes you have great relationships with your families and people who are making decisions and sometimes not, you know. And so you have to navigate this season delicately. And usually there's one person who steps in and does the bulk of the work. That's just kind of how it goes. And sometimes I think that sometimes it's good in the sense of there's not too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Not too many people trying to
oh, yeah.
trying to pull, but it becomes challenging when one person is doing all the work and the other person thinks like it needs to be done differently, but they're not in the day to day. I was very grateful that my sister was supportive, but I was in the day to day, but she also supported literally anything that I was like, this is what I think we need to do. Even if I was moving faster than she felt comfortable, she always was like, hold on, I need a break to
Yes.
like absorb this because I was in the day to day of it. So for me to make a decision was like nothing. Like I was like, this is what needs to happen. But to her, she like would visit every, once a week or whenever she was able to get there. And so we had to really communicate a lot. So that way she understood what was happening, in the moment.
I'm so glad that that worked out for you that way because I've just heard so many unfortunate stories of
Mm,
it being the opposite. So if that alone isn't enough for you to like get the ball rolling, like just listen to Erin's experience because she has so much to offer. She is here to help you out to be able
mm,
to have like the best experience out of something that's, sadly unavoidable and, like
mm,
it's kind of crazy, right? Because you have this expectation to be taken care of, to be looked out for. And then when it's
mm-hmm.
like that role reversal, like, wait a minute, I gotta get used to this. Like, what's
Yep.
going on here? And then in them too, like they might not want to listen to you because they're like, well, you're the child. Why should I be taking orders from you? I know
Mm,
what I want to do, but also it's like, oh, but I have to deal with my mortality and the limitations my body's now putting on me when my mind is still like, if the mind is still there, like wanting to
yeah.
do things that you used to be able to do. So what's the best way for people to connect with you? If they're like, gosh, I can so resonate with what Erin's sharing
Mm,
and I could really learn some more from her, where can they
mhm.
find you?
Yeah, so Instagram right now is the best place, NextGen Caregivers.
So you have something that you give away to help people.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so it's a caring for the caregiver toolkit. So it's basically like a stress management and self-care tips. So very early on, I created what I call a stress triage system. So much like when you go to the hospital, right? And if you have a knife sticking out of your side or and you have like a cut on your face, they're going to obviously address the knife sticking out of your side. And so through this stress triage system, I help you to walk through and figure out what are your triggers, what are the things that are challenging for you, what's considered like a low level trigger, a mid level trigger, and then a high trigger. And then we walk through and figure out like what is your contingency plan. So you've identified the problems. Now you know how to figure out what problem is the worst. And now what are the things, the solutions, the strategies, the tools that you're going to implement. And I give you 2 pages worth of different types of tools, as well as there's a whole email series that walks you through how to actually put this tool in place and to be able to do it so you can actually start seeing real change in your stress levels as a caregiver.
That sounds incredible. I love that.
Mm.
So, how can people work with you?
So many ways. So the best thing that I would tell you to do is to head over to Instagram and to check the link in the bio. There's always one-on-one options, and we're growing into group options and a course, and there's many things coming down the runway that are going to give you the opportunity, no matter where you're at and whatever level of support that you're looking for, there's availability. There is also a free Facebook group too. So if you go check out that link, our NextGen caregivers are hanging out in there and supporting each other, and I'm coming in there with exclusive content every single week. So
Amazing, amazing. I love it. And we'll include the link to the Facebook group in the description of this episode. So if you want to go check it out, you can head on over there to visit. So before I let you go, I love to ask my guests a question so that the listeners can get to know you a little bit better. So, like, not even related to anything that we talked about. Like, we're going to end on a light note. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. What's your favorite song to jam out to? Because I know you advise your client to go dance it out. So I want to know from you now, what's your favorite song to jam out to?
Oh gosh, of course, every song in the history of the world would escape my mind right now. Anything with a good beat. I love a good party rock anthem. Is a good beat to be able to dance to, but I have a whole playlist that I just put on and whatever comes up. Just love to dance and move my body. It's good. Get up and move.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being a guest and sharing all your experiences and your tips and your insight. I love everything that I've learned, and I'm definitely going to have a conversation with my husband later on today. So thank you for the inspiration and the kick in the butt.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much. Everyone, go follow Erin, go check her out, go learn from her, and send her a message if you want support from her. All right. Anyway, that's all we have for today. Let us know what your favorite takeaway was by sending us a message on Instagram or wherever you love to connect. And I'll catch you back here next week. Bye. That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. I would so appreciate that. And if you love what I share here, then you're going to love and want to join my free private Facebook community that's also called Marriage and Motherhood. I hope to see and connect with you in there. Otherwise, I'll catch you back here next week for the next episode. Bye.